Okay, never right on the mic.
You can't have an Irishman without a drink. So here we are. Thank you very much for coming. I'm really flattered by your attendance. So what I think the best thing I can do for you is to speak with the only authority I have, and that's my experience. So through this slideshow, what I can do is essentially show you what the life of an artist is, or the painter or sculptor. I think other people should call you an artist. You shouldn't call yourself an artist.
What's that?
So I paint, I sculpt, and I paint. So what I'm going to do here is just show you the trajectory of my career, so that you understand how that has affected myself and those around me. And then we can have a Q&A and unpack the whole thing. So essentially, this is a slideshow I prepared for Clemson University, but it's very similar to what we're going to be dealing with here. So I started off in Ireland. After graduating from high school, I went to the National College of Art and Design in Dublin, and I represented Ireland in the Silversmithing and Goldsmithing exhibition in London. So this is the kind of stuff I used to do. The reason I was doing silversmith and goldsmithing was because I was kicked out of the fine art department, the sculpture department, because I was producing work that was inspired by my faith as a Catholic, and I was doing figurative art, which is a manifestation of the logos, the truth of what it means to be a human being. So I was kicked out of the art, sculpture department, and that forced me into the craft department, goldsmithing and silversmithing. At least through that discipline, I felt that I could actually learn to cast bronze and then become a real sculptor. So I circumnavigated the prejudice of the art establishment. So I did this. This is one of my pieces. It was inspired by Juan Miró, an artist from Spain, and this was selected by the National Museum of Ireland for the National Collection. So they relaunched the silver collection in Ireland, the Irish Silver Collection, on my degree show. So it's no matter what the school, the National College of Art and Design, wanted to throw at me, they tried to give me the lowest points and kick me out of departments. But I won the the Designer of the Year award, and I launched the new silver collection in the National Gallery. And the President of Ireland gave both those awards, and all the faculty had to come to it. So it was very embarrassing for them. So just stick to your guns is really the message. So after that, after graduating, I did a statue of the Virgin Mary, and this was for a public space. It was actually for a drug rehabilitation centre in West Dublin, and it was commissioned by an ex-Marxist who converted to Catholicism and joined Opus Dei. So it was kind of a very interesting character. And then he commissioned me to do this Madonna and Child for a drug rehabilitation centre. And I was inspired by the suffering of these guys to maybe do something that would be very clear, and that was the Virgin standing on a syringe and a bottle as symbols of addiction, like contemporary Satan, contemporary serpent, and at the bottom having a chain being broken. So it's breaking the chains of addiction. So it's a very kind of literal communication to the guys who are suffering. And this was the Archbishop of Dublin unveiling it. There's a magazine article about that. This was a sculpture commission I got from the state just after that. It's for Dublin City Centre. So if you've ever been to Dublin, that's the Customs House in the background. And this commission was very interesting because they wanted a sculpture that would represent the working people of Dublin who built the city. And across the river from that is the IFSC, so that's where the yuppies are, where all the young people are making a ton of cash. on the backs of these people who built the city, so the working people of Dublin. So I thought this was a great opportunity to pay a tribute to the working people of Dublin of the 19th century, who suffered a lot to build the city we have, which is now yuppified. So this is how I approached it. I basically built the sculpture in clay first, and then the clay is refined, and then on the clay you put a rubber mold. So this is a rubber mold here. So the rubber mold takes the detail and the undercuts, and then there's a plaster jacket applied to that. So this is the plaster jacket that holds the form. So you see the rubber takes the detail, and it has these registers on it, and then when you pour plaster on top, the plaster becomes the feminine to the masculine rubber. Does that make sense? So the plaster holds the form, and the rubber takes the detail. Does that make sense? So the reason I go through this is because this is, you're guaranteed to be asked this question. So I'm going through the painful part first. So then once you take the rubber off and the plaster off, see how the rubber registers into the plaster? And this is the detail of the shoe, the boot, and these are the laces. Okay? So what's done now is you paint wax into that, like a chocolate Santy or an Easter egg, and you get a hollow sculpture in wax. Does that make sense? So that's what the hollow sculpture in wax looks like. And then once that is hollowed out, then you cut it into sections, a head, a leg, and so on. And they are invested in ceramic shell, like the plates you have at home. And then while it's still in ceramic shell, it's put into a kiln. You melt out all the wax, and you bake the ceramic shell. And while it's still white hot, you pour molten bronze into the shell. Okay? And then you smash off the shell, and then you're left with the hollow bronze, exactly as it was in wax. Does that make sense? Pretty cool, huh? Okay, the Greeks did that 5,000 years ago. So we are basically just, 250,000 years. So 2,500 years ago. So this is what we're still doing, the same technology, okay? So, and then it's finished and put in place. So after doing that, I realized I didn't know that much about anatomy, so I knew I had to study anatomy. I need to study the roots of European artistic tradition. And unfortunately, as you probably noticed when you see the news, that Ireland and Europe has very much going through a culture of repudiation. It's rejecting its identity, its culture, which essentially is Catholicism, Christianity, the source of it. And what we have is a culture that repudiates its identity. So it's very difficult to study traditional art and culture in Europe. I had to come to the United States, to the New York Academy of Art, to study anatomy as an artistic language. So that's what I'm doing here. So I learned to build the skeleton in its minute detail, all the tuberosities, and then to build the muscles from origin to insertion at each point. So almost medical understanding of the body. But I'm studying it as a language, okay? So this is anatomical language. So I use an anatomical language, those facts, to abstract from the facts to penetrate the poetry of form. So that's what an artist does. And that's what I aspire to be. And I'm doing it through sculpture and painting later on. This is a crucifix I did in the New York Academy. So I got these big beams, these Con Edison beams. I found them on the street. And I got some friends of mine to help me pull them upstairs to the third floor and create this huge cross. The beams, this is a 9-foot beam and there's a 6-foot beam across. And I was wondering, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I have to find models to pose for the crucifixion. And I didn't think that far, how I'm going to encourage people. But the other students were so enthused by this whole project, they were volunteering. So I didn't have to pay one model to pose for the crucifixion, because they were all dying to try it out. So it's almost like the Monty Python movie. So this is what I did here. I basically, friends of mine posed, and I basically modeled the crucifix from their poses. And this is a later adaptation. And this is when I completed the sculpture, and then I peeled it back to the bones and muscles. And this was me exploring my Catholic faith. What I was trying to do at this stage is my philosophical and theological understanding of the faith got to a certain level, and my artistic language and grammar was left behind. And what I wanted to do was explore the philosophy and theology of the body through my primary grammar, which is form. So through anatomical grammar, through anatomical, artistic anatomy essentially, I explored my theological and philosophical and theological understanding of the incarnation, okay? If there's one word that you leave this bar with, it's incarnation, okay? That is the most fundamental reality of our lives. We are incarnate, and we believe in the incarnation. I think this is the most important thing to really to bring home from this, because if you want to sum up everything I've done over the last 55 years of my life, it's understanding and projecting the incarnation, what it means to be a human being. So while I was doing this, I decided to, okay, how can I explore my faith through form? What I'm going to do is make the most impactful and powerful image in history, which is the crucifixion, which is a complete gift of self. That's what it means. The crucifixion is the complete gift of God to his people. It's where God makes love to his people. And in this crucifix, I decided to peel right back to the bone structure and the muscle structure. So asking myself, do I really believe in that Jesus Christ, that God became man, that he was incarnate, that he had bones, and that he had muscles? That's what I'm challenging myself with in this piece. And while I was doing it, a priest of Opus Dei actually came and visited me in the studio and was fascinated by this piece. And I explained what it meant to me. And he said, that's really interesting. That's just like John Paul II's theology of the body. I said, theology of the what? He said, theology of the body. I said, that is fascinating. Tell me more about it. He got me onto Christopher West's material. So if you want to understand the theology of the body, check out Christopher West. He knows how to unpack it in a very everyday language. And I'm telling you, if you understand the theology of the body, it will transform your life. It will transform your faith. It is probably the greatest gift that John Paul II, Saint John Paul II gave us, is his theology of the body. Google it. So that got me into that, and I started researching it, and I started teaching it to the other students every Friday night in the bars of Soho. So first of all, I started teaching it in my studio every Friday at 8 o'clock. And then after 12 o'clock, we were still talking until 12 o'clock, and then we had to close the New York Academy. And we spilled out into the bars of Soho and Tribeca until 3 o'clock in the morning talking about theology of the body. Now, why? These are the most talented artists from all over the world, from Russia, China, everywhere. And they're learning everything about the human body in the New York Academy of Art, Figurative Art School, learning everything about the body at the highest level possible, except what it means. And John Paul II gave me what the body means. And these people were so fascinated by this that it transformed their lives. And 16 of these guys and girls converted to Catholicism over the years. Okay? So just be aware, one of the biggest problems in the Catholic Church today is that people don't understand the Catholic Church. I think it was Fulton Sheen said, there are some very few people that hate the Catholic Church. And the reason but there are a lot of people that hate it because they don't know what it means. The problem is we need to communicate what Catholicism means. And I think we're dealing with damaged goods today. The Catholic Church is damaged goods. It's like it just fell off the back of a lorry. We have to repair the church. And from ourselves, first of all, and then from those around us. And repackage the church so that people understand what it means, and especially in the area of sexuality. We have to be brave to understand the truth and meaning of human sexuality in the church's teaching and pass it on to others. And John Paul II does this beautifully. He repackages the church's teaching on human sexuality in the most refreshing way you could imagine. Okay? So anyway, moving on. Shortly after after September 11, I moved back to Europe and I moved to Rome. I thought that I got a tip off on getting a gig to do a 5-meter, which is like a 20-foot marble sculpture of Saint Escrivá for St. Peter's Basilica. You know those big marble sculptures around St. Peter's? So I got a tip off that I could get that gig, so I obviously jumped on it. So I went to Rome, and while I was there, I did 3 drawings of the Pietà. This is Michelangelo's sculpture of the Virgin and Christ. And during that time, I really discovered so much about my faith. Because after September 11, I was deeply scarred by that event, being in New York at the time. And also around that time, 2 of the kids I looked after in the Bronx, I did inner city project work in the Bronx for 2 years. And 2 of the kids that I was looking after, their father, an NYPD cop, committed suicide in front of them. So I was trying to deal with that. And then a guy in my neighborhood in Queens jumped out the window above me and killed himself. So I found him on the ground at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then September 11 happened. So, and the school that I was in, the New York Academy, went on fire. So that burnt down as well. So it was a really crazy, that was just 2 weeks, okay? So I decided, my head was wrecked, and I went to Rome, and that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to draw the Pietà. I'm going to spend a week on each drawing, each angle. And as I did that, I was completely healed. I was healed by faith in God, faith in humanity, and I realized that I had a vocation as an artist. If I can take a fraction of what Michelangelo achieved in the Pietà and bring it forward to today, then my life would be worthwhile. My wife would be worthwhile. My life would be worthwhile. That's my wife down there. She's very worthwhile. So my life would be worthwhile. And that's, I realized the power of art, that if I can bring that forward, and that's what I promised myself to do for the rest of my life. Then I got this gig to do St. Joseph for Catholic Information Center on K Street in DC. So I did this little quick sketch, and then I enlarged it to life-size and bronze, more or less. And then I was given this commission to do St. Escrivá in Murray Hill Place. So this is the headquarters of Opus Dei in Manhattan. And this was inspired by Bernini. This is what you can learn a lot when you're living in Rome. I spent every Sunday just drawing all the masterpieces in Rome. And then I did this sculpture based on a Bernini, and it's basically, I was asked to do a St. Escrivá life-size in this space, and I think, oh my God, that's going to dominate the tabernacle and the altar. And I knew they didn't want that, so I suggested, why don't we set him into the wall and see how that works? And then he was still kind of dominant. So I said, okay, let's have him gesture towards the Blessed Sacrament. And that's what St. Escrivá used to do all the time. Whenever he's giving talks, he would always gesture towards the Blessed Sacrament, so that your prayer is always returning to the tabernacle. So in this piece, what I managed to do is communicate his person and his message in the one piece. So when you walk into this room, this chapel, you are basically, you confront him and his message. And you don't land on him, but when you see him, you land on the tabernacle. See that? Okay, so this is what we can learn from the great masters. And that's in more detail. The other thing is I wanted to communicate his love for the Blessed Eucharist. So I made his vestments like flames, and I made the frame like a fireplace. So you have that kind of feeling of passion. This is a marble version of the same sculpture. So I did this is the original plaster, and then I'm basically carving back into the marble to get the image in marble. This is mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. This is where I fell into modernism. It was an experiment. Basically, this gives you the reason I put it in here is as an act of humility, and I need a lot of that. But also, it helps me helps other people understand by not pointing at other bad artists, but my own bad art, that this commission, I spent over 3 years in Ireland. I must have done about 30 different proposals, very elaborate, figurative, artistic proposals. None of them succeeded in getting a commission. And then I found this proposal under my bed, and I had to get it in 3 hours. So I just pulled it together, pulled out this crazy design, and of course, what did it? It won. Why did it win? Because it means absolutely nothing, okay? So if you're wondering why there's so much really, really bad art around, is because really, really bad art critics exist, and they control you, okay? We need to liberate great artists. The problem with the art, one of the big problems with the art world today is it's dominated by art critics and the galleries. Why? Because they don't go for talent, they go for manipulation. The less talented the artists they promote, the better for them. Why? Because they have the control. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to train a new generation of artists who are completely empowered by their ability, their competence, and they can reclaim lost ground of 100 years of bad art. Okay? So these are some commissions I did for Dublin. It's my local parish. This is St. Joseph and the Child Jesus for Florida. It's another one inspired by the prayer of St. Joseph. This is an article that was done in the Irish Times. It's kind of like the New York Times of Ireland about what I'm doing. It wasn't commissioned by them, but they took it from a good Catholic magazine, which was a miracle in itself because it's the most anti-Catholic newspaper on the planet. So they gave me a good spread, which is good. This is St. Joseph and the Child Jesus with the Virgin Mother. And what's happening here is that this is bronze, and it's been torched to heat up the bronze so that once it gets to a certain temperature and you spray certain acids onto it, that pulls out certain colors. Okay, so that's what they call patina. Okay, you don't paint bronze, you patina bronze. It's the inherent color of the copper in the bronze that's pulled out with different types of acids at different types of temperatures. Okay, it's quite a sophisticated technique. Now, just so you understand the logic of what I'm trying to do here, in the New York Academy of Art, I learned all about the scientific reductionist understanding of the human body. This is the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, which stems from the Enlightenment ideas, where they basically strip down all of artistic understanding to a formula. So they took the great masters from Italy and Spain, and they ripped the soul out of them, which is Catholicism, and they left us with a shell of their artistic technique. And that was a very good way to learn the nuts and bolts of art, and that's how I was taught in the New York Academy of Art. But you must not forget to put the soul back into the body. Otherwise, it becomes dead art. And that's why the modernists rebelled against the academy in the past, is because the scientific reductionist of the Enlightenment basically ripped the soul out of art and left it as a shell. And that's why the Impressionists and the Modernists after that rebelled against that, and rightly so. But unfortunately, they rebelled against it without Christ. I'm basically rebelling against it with Christ. And that's the future. It's like Europe. There's no future for Europe unless it embraces Christ again. And I'd say the same with the United States. Look what's happening in Europe and beware. It's right at your tail. So in this illustration here, what I've done is I've taken the bone structure and the muscle structure of the body, and I've broken it down into 5 different principles, okay? So the extensor muscles, they're the green muscles. The flexor muscles, they pull back. It's like a Monty Python sketch here. So, and then the abductors are the blue ones. They pull out, abduct, alien abduction, you heard about that? And then adductors are orange, they pull in. So complementary colors for complementary actions. And there's one more action. They're the yellow. Anybody know what they are? What do the yellow muscles do? Begins with or. What? They rotate, okay? So the yellow muscles rotate the body. So there are 5 different colors for 5 different groups. And that's how that's basically anatomical logic. So I basically developed a grammar that's simplified so that we can analyze a body and a sculpture and an art or painting, and then we can use that to study a masterpiece. This is a drawing by Pontormo on the right, who was a student of Michelangelo. You probably heard of Michelangelo. Michelangelo was a great Irish artist from Italy. So a student of Michelangelo did this, and the reason I chose him is because this piece, Pontormo, the artist, he managed to take all the scientific reductionist ideas of anatomy and of perspective and all these aspects, and then inject the soul back into it. Okay? So what did he do? He basically injected the mysticism of the soul back into the body. And how did he do that? I'll show you. I had no idea what I was doing. And a very important point, this was done in Beato Angelico's studio. Anybody know who Beato Angelico is? Anybody hear of Beato Angelico? Okay. Fra Angelico, yeah, he's a Beato, he's a blessed. He's the only artist that reached the highest level that an artist has reached today, which is blessed. We haven't made saint yet, so we're working on it. So, so this is Beato Angelico's studio. I was given his studio, which was a great gift. The Dominicans were very generous, and they gave it to me for 2 years. And within those 2 years, 6 students converted to Catholicism. Okay? So think of the power of that. And how they converted was this 5-minute demonstration, if I can make a 5-minute demonstration, about this anatomy, okay? So what happens is, I took Pontormo's mystical image of the angel Gabriel in the Annunciation. The most sacred moment in history, when God penetrated his planet, his people, in the Annunciation. Okay? Think of the sacred moment that the Incarnation is. The angel Gabriel entered into our space and brought Christ to the Virgin Mary. Okay, super, super important. So, what did Pontormo do with this? He abstracted it. How did he abstract it? So what I thought to myself, what would be really cool, is take my New York Academy of Art technique, that scientific reductionist technique, apply it to a mystical work of art and see what happens. Okay? Watch what happens. What I did first was I take this transparency and put it on top of the drawing, and I use my friend here, Gerald, and I pulled out the skeleton. By pulling out the skeleton, you can see the bone structure here, and you can see the chest is twice life size. So what is he doing? He's inhaling the Holy Spirit. Look at the bones of the arms and the legs. He's dancing with joy, okay? And then next, what I did was I put another transparency on top and pulled out the muscle structure. And with the flexors and extensors, I can see which muscles are in action, which muscles are relaxing. And you can see that he's actually dancing and that the muscles are tapering in a very graceful way. The grace of the Holy Spirit. The next level was this purple one here where I unpacked the drapery. What's the drapery doing? It's not dripping with gravity like me here, but it's billowing with the wind of the Holy Spirit. So every level of grammar, Pontormo abstracted from every level of grammar. He abstracted the facts to penetrate the truth. That, in essence, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of art. Art takes facts and penetrates truths. That's why you have to be patient with art. Great works of art take the facts and use the facts to penetrate the truth. And that's exactly what Pontormo did here. And I was graced with Beato Angelico Studio to do this, because I couldn't do this in the back of my car. So that's clearly a gift from Beato Angelico to me and to all my students. Because one of my students who went to this, this is them on top of each other. So you have the bone structure, muscle structure, and the drapery all together. It looks a bit psychedelic, but that's how a great master like Pontormo saw the human person. Does that make sense? Now, these are some of the students I had in Beato Angelico School. So basically, the first school I started was the Irish Academy of Figurative Art in 2004. Then the Beato Angelico School after that, and then the Sacred Art School Firenze, which the Cardinal asked me to found. So this is the Beato Angelico School in San Marco, and these are some of my students here. The girl here is a very famous artist in DC, and the guy on the left is a very famous artist in Dublin. So these guys really made it to the top. And I'm teaching them anatomy in 3 dimensions here. And the guy down the back there, this is Osamu Tanimoto, all the way from Tokyo, okay? This guy, he came to Florence to study restoration of sacred art. And he says to me that sacred art restored him, because he converted to Catholicism through our studio practice here. And after he was baptized in the Duomo in Florence, I asked him, as we were exiting the building, I asked him, Osamu, what was it that made you want to become a Catholic? And he said it was that 5-minute demonstration about Pontormo that helped him realize, I can't create art of this quality unless I become Catholic. Isn't that cool? So it just shows the power. And this is the national, La Nazione, which is an Italian national newspaper, did an article about what I was doing in Beato Angelico's studio. So Lorna de Beato Angelico, on the bones of Beato Angelico, this new revival is happening in Florence. Now this is the Archbishop of Florence baptizing 2 of the students in Florence. And they were going out with each other, and they actually married each other after this. Okay? Actually, they married each other before this. It was part of their preparation, I think. So they renewed their wedding vows, they were baptized, they were confirmed, and they had the First Holy Communion all in one night. Easter night in Florence, in the Duomo, with the new Cardinal Archbishop. This was the Cardinal's first Easter in Rome. And when we went back to the sacristy afterwards, where the Patsy conspiracy happened, I don't know if you ever heard of that, back in the Renaissance times. But anyway, the bishop gave me a big hug and said he thanked me for the greatest Easter of his life, because now he has a family in Florence. So that gives you an idea of how much impact this art can have. And he shortly after that asked me to found the diocesan school, the Sacred Art School Firenze, which I founded in 2011. And this is these are the two students, and this is the young man's father on the right. He was a Vietnam vet who had he had a lot of post-traumatic stress, and he was very anti-Catholic. And he said to his son, a year before this, he said, if you become Catholic, I'll make sure you never have children. Really hardcore, huh? And here he is at the baptism of his daughter. And after the baptism of his daughter, he asked me to prepare him for baptism next year. And he was baptized, this after baptism of his son. And he was baptized the next year with his granddaughter. And Osamu Tanimoto, the Japanese student. So, and you can imagine the cardinal's face. He was like, "What the hell's going on here?" So that's when he asked me, "Can I visit your studio?" Which was in the Dominican San Marco. Now, unfortunately, the new prior came in. The prior who let me in there, the first, had retired, and a new prior came from Rome. And he didn't want me in the studio. So I had to tell the bishop that things are getting a little difficult, I have to move. And so he asked, is there any chance I could visit you without prior permission? Excuse the pun. So I said, Saturday morning at 9 o'clock is probably the best time. So he visited, and we had an hour meeting together. And during that meeting, he wanted to follow what I was doing, this altarpiece I was doing for Rome. And then the second half hour, he asked me about founding the school, the Sacred Art School Firenze. This is Cody's work after he was baptized. Pretty impressive. This is like 4 meters. And this is Osamu's work after he was baptized. No, Osamu's a painter, but he has a great sense of humor. And this is Osamu and Cody. They were basically teaching the next generation of artists. So in Florence. So one time I was walking home from a bar in Florence, and I saw these bunch of 40 kids spraying graffiti on a sculpture. And I said, oh God, this is terrible. So I grabbed the can off them, and I lectured them in the strongest Italian I had, and I marched off with the can in my hand, because I was so furious. I literally saw red. They were spraying red. And I just prayed to my guardian angel these guys wouldn't jump me, because 40 teenagers could do a lot of damage. And when I got home, I promised that I would teach the Florentine kids their tradition in the tradition of their faith. And I got these guys to do it with me. So this is them giving back to the church. This is a sketch for the altarpiece I was doing in the studio when the bishop visited. And this is it elaborated in bronze. So these are life-size figures. So it's the Virgin in the center, and she's calling down the Holy Spirit onto the church. So it's the Dome of St. Peter's on the Holy of Holies of Jerusalem. So Old Testament, New Testament. And the 12 tribes of Israel is written here on the door in Hebrew. And Omnes cum Petrum ad Jesum per Mariam, all with Peter to Jesus through Mary, is written over the door. And then the light penetrates through the church onto the world. This is Cosmos. Cosmos is a figure you get in the Eastern Orthodox tradition at the bottom of their icons. So I wanted to incorporate Old Testament, New Testament, and East and West. Okay? So that's what I'm doing here. So the light penetrates his shoulder through the wings, penetrates his forehead, and he's holding a globe here. And he's pointing at the most important place in the world, which is Dublin. So over here, we have the young apostles and the older apostles and a bunch of holy women at the top here. So I was trying to get as many women into as possible. So up for the ladies. Okay. So that's what's happening up here. And in the background is actually the ceiling from the upper room in Jerusalem, which I did some research on when I was there. And this is it in the chapel. And I got a great opportunity to meet Pope Benedict on a Monday morning. On a Monday, he gave me rosary beads, and then the next day I got to meet his secretary, Georg Ganswein. Spent a few hours, about 20 minutes in the Vatican Gardens explaining my next project, my ultimate project, which is the Vatican Academy of Art. So what I'm trying to do is the Irish Academy of Figurative Art, the Beato Angelico School, the Sacred Art School Firenze, and now in Falls Church, I've just started Dony Mac Manus Studios, which is basically a professional studio where I train in apprentices in sacred art to bring this vision forward. But the end game is a Vatican Academy of Art. There's a Vatican Academy of everything except art. So if you think about the Vatican, you think first of all about the church. Second of all, you think about art. As Pope Francis said, or Pope Benedict said when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, the two major promoters of Catholic faith are the saints and the art that comes from the womb of the church. Not beautiful? And what we're trying to do is form saints that create beautiful art. Because what is art? Art is the overflow of the interior life of the artist. So if your interior life is a mess and you're a really talented artist, what do? You produce a mess. I don't want to quote Pope Francis, but we don't want to create a mess, okay? You want to create something beautiful and positive. So order your soul so that it overflows in beautiful art, okay? So the next day I got to meet Pope Benedict again, and it was a beautiful encounter because Georg was standing right beside him. He still had my card in his pocket. I had spent 20 minutes explaining the vision of what I was trying to do. And now I got to meet Pope Benedict. So I said, okay, he gave me rosary beads on Monday. This is Wednesday. I have an image of St. Joseph, which is my sculpture, but it just so happened to be on my business card. So all the details are on the back. So I gave it to him. I said, un proposta Santa Padre, un'Accademia di Bell'Arte del Vaticano. A proposal, Holy Father, of Vatican Academy of Art. I would ask you to pray for this, and that we can start it here in Virginia and bring it to the Vatican. So please pray for that. This is the Sacred Art School Firenze. This is the building of the school I founded there. And this is me with the Cardinal giving a guided tour of the school. This is the first project we did for the baptistry in Florence. These paintings, these are my paintings which I did. These are my first paintings. And then I did a bust of Pope Benedict for St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. And Cardinal Dolan unveiled that. And then I did this award for Prominent Catholic of the Year for the Catholic Information Center. And this is Father Arnie giving it to Bishop Worrell. I do that every year. And then this is a piece I did for Milan with the Madonna and Child. It's in terracotta. And this is a Theology of the Body sculpture. So this is a male and female form spiraling around each other back to back. And at the top is a child pulling them up. And at the bottom is a skeleton pulling them down. And it's the woman, he's grabbing the woman's leg. So this is about the crisis of maternity. Essentially, it's a pro-life monument. The St. Joseph is dealing with the crisis of paternity, where young men are not bringing up their children, especially in inner city projects, which I worked on in the Bronx and in Belfast and in Dublin. This is dealing with the crisis of maternity. This is an altarpiece I did for the headquarters of the Knights of Malta in Dublin. And it's the life of St. John the Baptist. So I just did it in drawings first, and then developed it into paintings with some friends of mine who are painters. And this gives you an idea of how art works. So I wanted to use the red vestments here to represent the sacrifice of John the Baptist. And then I thought, okay, we need to balance it off with this composition. So how do we do that? Well, we need some red in here. So what I did is I took the red of John the Baptist and I gave it to Elizabeth, his mom. So this is how Christian iconography develops. So this is just a new way of projecting Elizabeth and connecting her with her son. Another thing I want you to watch out for is watch how the linear perspective brings you to the center here where the tabernacle is going to be. So the lines bring you into the tabernacle. And then the light source in each of the compositions comes from the Holy Spirit. So these figures are lit by the Holy Spirit from this side, and these from this side, and these from top, okay? So that when you look at this image, you're not thinking about linear perspective and light sources. You're just praying. And subconsciously, you're absorbing the protagonist here. Linear perspective is the Blessed Sacrament, and light source is the Holy Spirit. See how it works? So the more command you have over visual grammar, the more you can communicate with power and conviction. Essentially, you're giving bones and muscles to your art, so it has a punch. Okay? An artist's responsibility is to be competent enough to demand your attention. How does he do that? Through the competence of his ability to draw, paint, and sculpt. If an artist can do a figure that's convincing that there are real bones and real muscles in it, you're going to pay attention to it, right? Because he's demanding your attention and he deserves it. But if somebody gives you some sort of rubber little duck of a sculpture, you just go, this guy's a joke, right? So this is what I'm trying to do here. This is a church. I did this mosaic for the front of the church. This is a sketch for the church first. And this is a quick painting I did in my studio in Dublin. And then I used Jim Caviezel as an icon of it that we all recognize as Christ. And I made him into a mosaic style. And then I incorporated him into the painting. And then I used Madonna, a beautiful Madonna, and I made her icon-like through mosaic. And then I assembled them all together in a studio in Manhattan. You see how big this is? Like the heads are that size. And then it's turned into mosaic. And then it's put on the facade of the church. Thank you. And this is a Eucharistic procession opening the church. This is in the University of Wisconsin, which is really fun because that's it is across the piazza. So I thought it was really fun to do that for the, this is me walking away with the check. But there's one thing I learned from the Americans. Yeah, no. So this was a really cool gig to have because the University of Wisconsin is the birthplace of feminism in the United States. And I thought this would be a really good way to answer. What is the most positive image of a woman ever in history? There's one thing to be God. But Mother of God? That's pretty impressive, okay? So here, the Mother of God has been crowned Queen of Heaven. Beat that, ladies. I don't know. So that I thought was a really good answer. That's why I proposed this for the University of Wisconsin. To just drown evil in the abundance of good. Drown ugliness in the abundance of beauty. This is where I get most of my source information. This is me copying in the National Gallery here in DC. And this is your gallery, guys. You should make a trip to this place. It's in chronological order. And if you want to unpack your faith from St. Francis of Assisi, his influence on Giotto and Masaccio, that is the source of all the art in the gallery. None of the art in the National Gallery would exist without St. Francis of Assisi. Because he inspired Giotto, who is the father of modern painting. I'll unpack that if we have time.
Please do.
Okay. So these are some copies I did. This is Father Paul's favorite, the album Madonna. This is El Greco. This is me mixing the great masters together to get so this is El Greco and Bottini mixed together. This is some stuff I did in the Natural History Museum, which is a lot of fun. This is me during COVID. This is the death of my father, which is which is a rough thing. This is the unveiling of Saint Oliver Plunkett in Ireland, one of the last martyrs, and this was done by the Archbishop of Armagh. It's the main cathedral in Ireland. So it was a very special occasion to do this for the sanctuary of the primary cathedral of Ireland. This is Bishop O'Higgins. He looked after the famine victims of Ireland during the Great Famine. So this is him with a young girl who represents Ireland, and he's giving her bread and the word, education and food. This is me exploring painting with the skeleton and a Swiss Guards uniform. I always wanted to paint that. This is a crucifix I did recently for a neighbor. So you remember the white crucifix you saw earlier on in all the anatomy? This is it fleshed out, okay? So you understand what goes into a sculpture like this, okay? And this is just finishing a bronze sculpture in a foundry. This is what it's like. I want to rush on here. So what I'm dealing with here, this is a little cartoon to illustrate what we're dealing with here. The hermeneutic of continuity is in crisis, okay? In many spheres, in the liturgy, in art, and so many things. So what I'm trying to do here in art is show a continuity. In the past, we could do this. Today, we can do this. Okay, there's a crisis. There's a crisis of continuity. And that crisis has to be addressed by competence. Humility to penetrate the great history, and the courage to move forward. Okay? In the words of Ratzinger in The Spirit of the Liturgy, who became Pope Benedict, he called for going forward in tradition. What a revolutionary call that is. Forward in tradition. What does that mean? It means that tension, to enter into the tension of going forward, but in tradition. And that tension is what creates great culture. So it's understanding your tradition, having the humility to study the great masters, and have the weight of the great masters on your shoulder, and then the courage to move forward with that understanding. That's what creates great culture. Think about that as yourself, your own struggle as a human being. What's the equivalent of forward in tradition? It's fallen nature and the aspiration for the divine. That is the essence of the Christian calling. That's what to be a saint means. And the most important work of art is not a sculpture or a painting, but it's each one of you being a masterpiece in the hands of Christ. He is calling each one of you to be a saint. So we all can walk out this door with the mission to create a masterpiece, which is your sanctification. This is a model for the studio I just built in Falls Church. So it's a cardboard model, which I used to design the studio. And then I used those drawings and those models to create architectural drawings through a friend of mine, an architect. They got approval to build the studio. These are some of my students in the National Gallery. And this is a sculpture monument I designed for the Navy for Annapolis. So it's for the War on Terror, Global War on Terror. So it's to be unveiled on the September 11, 2026. So it's 25th anniversary. So it's the different disciplines of the US Navy. So there's 7-foot figures. And this is me doing it on the back porch. And my poor wife's sitting room. So this is why we're building the studio. So these are all now, there's 6 of them, and they're all together in Philadelphia being cast in bronze. So they should be unveiled soon by, please God, the Vice President. And this is one of my models. He's a local plumber. who is posing for the aviator. And this is just a video taken this morning of the studio under construction. So this studio is going to be a private studio where I will give apprenticeships to young students to train in the disciplines of sculpture, painting, artistic anatomy, and drawing, so that they can serve the church primarily through liturgical art. Because if you want to transform a culture, you start with the sacred art. Because if you want to understand any culture, you go to the sacred art. If you go to the Metropolitan Museum in New York City, what you will see, the finest works of art are from the liturgical traditions of each culture, whether it's Greek, Egyptian, Assyrian, Islamic, no matter what faith it is, it's the sacred art is the pinnacle of their creativity. So what we need essentially in our culture, to correct our culture, we need to correct our liturgy. Because if we lose sight of true liturgy, which is the Mass, the greatest gift any of us can experience, and we can experience it every day, we can participate in the love of God every day. We can do that, and we can overflow into our lives. That is the primary liturgy. The problem with our country and the world today is we've lost sight of true liturgy, oriented, ad orientem, oriented towards Christ. Okay? Only until we fix that orientation towards Christ, we will never heal our culture. Every culture has a liturgy. If it's not the Mass, it's NFL, it's Hollywood, it's pornography, it's anything else. What we have to do is correct our orientation towards Christ, make him the pinnacle, and all our art and architecture is oriented towards that. Then we recreate the beautiful cities that we have in Europe that are being destroyed daily by new invasions. The only way to protect ourselves from being destroyed is to recreate our culture, which is built on our cult. There's no culture without cult. Our cult is Christ. And that's why this studio is here. So that's why I'm building this studio. Christine was very brave to do this with me. She's a very, very brave woman to marry an artist. I did warn her beforehand. Like I lived in the outskirts of Rome in a warehouse with my only neighbors were gypsies and hookers, and I was just burning pallets every night. So she realized what she was getting into. So she's a very brave woman. So I want you to, a round of applause for my wife, please. So I think we could leave it at that, because otherwise we'll be here all night. Yeah.
That's it. Keep going, please.
Let's hear it for Dony Mac Manus, everybody.
Thank you very much for coming.
I'm going to use up to get started with our Q&A and announce our Instagram winner here. Tony, the people around me were joking when you brought up St. Francis and how he's the spirit of the National Gallery. And you said, oh, if I want to say more. And so I'm, as the host of this event, I'm claiming my authority. Please tell us more about St. Francis and the National Gallery, please.
I regularly am asked to give tours of the National Gallery because, especially by Catholic groups, actually, as Father Scalia started this, we give the tour together. It's kind of like I don't know, it's a Laurel and Hardy affair. So, so we basically make our way through I deal with most of the art and he deals with most of the theology. But anyway, essentially, if you go to the room 1 in the National Gallery, this is the cheap way to do it. Just do it yourself. Go to room 1 and you will notice that half the room are icons. The other half are Giotto, Duccio, the early Italian Renaissance. The icons, if you just close your eyes and think of an icon, what is an icon? What are the distinctive aspects of an icon? A lot of people say it's flat. Actually, it's not flat. It's actually not the one-dimensional. It's not two-dimensional. It's not three-dimensional. It's fourth-dimensional. It enters into the sacred. And what does an icon do? It is a portal to the eschaton. What is the eschaton? The eschaton is end times. It's where we go after we die. Okay? So an icon is a portal to eternity. So when we look at an icon, it's a window into the eschaton. We're invited into the sacred space. And how are we invited into the sacred space? By creating sacred perspective. So it's very flat. It's gold background. People have halos. And what else do we see? We also see that the anatomy is kind of strange. They've got big heads, big eyes, small lips, very strange fingers, toes. So icons have a sacred anatomy. It's abstracted by the sacred to remind us that we're not looking at an everyday person. We're looking at a sacred, a transformed person, a person transformed by the eschaton, by the eternal times. What else are we looking at? We're looking at sacred light. Where is the light coming from in an icon? The light is not coming from outside, it's coming from inside. How do we know that? Because wherever the drapery touches the flesh of the saint, the light emanates. So the light emanates from the saint, the sacrality of the person. What do we do when we cross the room and we see Giotto, the first painting you see? We see Giotto introducing us to natural perspective. Here I am, I'm a natural body in natural perspective. What does he introduce us to? Natural anatomy, natural light, light from the exterior. So what is he doing? He's listening to St. Francis of Assisi. And the ideas of St. Francis of Assisi are basically helping us to contemplate the humanity of Christ. So he's bringing Christ into our space. So with Giotto, this is the first time art comes into our space. It convinces us through natural anatomy and natural light, which defines the form, in natural perspective, we can actually see these bodies come into our space. So St. Francis of Assisi, essentially, he introduced us to the presepe, the cribs, with the donkeys and all that. He introduced us to Christus Sufferens, Christ suffering on the cross. He introduced us to the Stations of the Cross. It's transformational what St. Francis of Assisi did. He basically transformed Western culture. He gave birth to Western culture, Christian Western culture, through two of the greatest artists of his time, Giotto in painting and Dante in literature. Look at Dante's Divine Comedy. It's totally penetrated with Francis of Assisi. Okay? So that's basically what I do. I basically unpack the rest of it. The whole National Gallery is based on that change. Sorry.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Fine, Jeff. I guess we will let that stand.
Thank you.
Your talk was incredible.
Thank you.
I have about 50,000 questions I would love to ask, but I already have some questions from
Get the engine running low.
some folks. The first question I got was from our bartenders. So everyone tip your bartenders. They work really hard here. So they get the first question of the night. If you could be mentored by one of the sculpture greats, Michelangelo, Rodin, etc., which one and why?
Sculpture greats. Probably Michelangelo, the great Irishman. Our Bernini would be one of those two. Unfortunately, Rodin, he lost the plot. But very talented artist, but yeah.
And like,
Why?
why?
Well, Michelangelo, he basically was so unbelievably talented. He just broke all the molds. He took what Giotto taught us and he just put it on steroids. I mean, literally on steroids. Have you seen the Sistine Chapel? Yeah. I mean, it's Giotto on steroids. And so he really knew how to use the grammar of the anatomy to project power of the faith in a tremendously revolutionary way.
Wonderful, wonderful. This question, I guess, kind of falls from this one. Can an artist create truly sacred art if they don't have a deep prayer life?
That's a very good question. Artistic ability is not dependent on anything. It's a gift from God. So you can be really articulate as an artist. If you don't have faith, it's not going to... Rodin is a perfect example. There's a really articulate artist who has very little faith. And they had a show in Florence of Rodin's work and Michelangelo's work beside each other. And the whole thesis of the show was to prove how much Rodin learned from Michelangelo. But what you actually see, if you have a Catholic soul, is what he didn't learn. Okay? Essentially, Michelangelo has a fallen nature, and he was aspiring to the divine. And you can see it in his work. With Rodin, he had a fallen nature, and he was quite happy to stay there. So it has the great talent, but without the struggle. And it's the struggle that makes us truly human.
That's fantastic. Folks, Jeff's kids are running around looking at any questions. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. Let them know that you have questions for them so that we can collect them.
This one's for last.
Of course. Oh, I have a whole stack here. All right, perfect. Next question is, why is modern art so profoundly ugly?
Wow, well, it's profoundly ugly because it's profoundly untrue. The three transcendentals, truth, goodness, and beauty, are found together. Where we lack truth, we will lack goodness and beauty. And it goes for all of the transcendentals. So when we have a culture that has turned its back on the way, the truth, and the light, the perfect manifestation of the three transcendentals, which is Jesus Christ. If our culture turns its back on that, we are left with ugliness. And that's why the majority of art today is really, really ugly. You just have to go to the National Gallery and you see that the West Wing is magnificent, heart-stopping beauty. And you go to the East Wing and you just want to go back to the West Wing. Yeah. It's just so ugly. Yeah.
Fantastic. As a sculptor, do you find that your own expertise helps or hinders you from being swept up into the beauty of other sculptures? Like, part of this question is like, are you, as an expert in your field, like, does that expertise prevent you from being able to appreciate the beauty of the other art that's out there?
Well, I would like to be an expert in my field, but I know what you're coming at. And yes, it does spoil a lot of art for you, but it makes the other stuff so good, okay? So the more it's like anything. If you get really good at something, it means you really appreciate the good stuff. And the bad stuff really hurts. It's like having perfect pitch. I think we all have it in our own way. It might be with beer. So I think that answers the question.
Sure. So is there, like, when you are looking at like a piece of art, you are probably seeing things that the rest of us might not appreciate. Can you think of an instance where, like, you are looking at, maybe this is something in the Sistine Chapel or another sculpture, where before you really had an appreciation for art, you looked at it and saw one thing, and 30 years later, we're like, oh, I see this as a whole different thing now.
I mean, the first time I went to Rome, and I advise you all, just go to Rome before you die. Actually, go next year, because you never know when you're going to die. Rome will blow your socks off. You don't really know your faith until you've been to Rome. But in Rome, I went there in 1990. I thought everything was like crazy amazing. But then when I learned how to sculpt and draw and paint, I realized actually half of it is complete schlock. and then the good stuff is so good. So you can't lose. It's just like any refinement. You just penetrate deeper and deeper. And it means that you can actually bring it forward, which I think is our responsibility, is to bring forward, whether it's having children or bringing art into the world or whatever you do.
Awesome. Yes, awesome. So speaking of bringing forward into the world, I had this question, but I'm glad someone else also asked it. The rise of AI in our society. I recently listened to a podcast by a couple of Dominicans called the podcast is Godsplaining by a couple of Dominicans, and they were talking about how AI and its effect on the human imagination, and how like it might be detrimental to humans and art and all of these kinds of things. And now we have your talk, and it's very like it's very apropos that like we have this talk about art. And I just listened to this podcast on AI, and someone else has also asked the question, like, what are your thoughts on AI and art and all like those things?
Okay, well, how long have you got? It's like AI is red flag to a bull for me. AI is anti-incarnation. Anti-incarnation. We are incarnate. Our God is incarnate. AI is anti-incarnational. It's a very powerful tool, but it can be very dominant in our lives. And it's going to dominate us more and more if we're not careful. So I was just talking to my wife the other day, and I basically want to drop my phone completely. Try one day. Take Sunday. And just drop your phone for a day. Do yourself a favor. Do your wife a favor. Do your kids a favor. Grab your life back. I'm really serious. This is the biggest threat we got.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I have nothing else to add. On that bombshell, do I have anything else? All right. So, what?
One more.
Okay. Okay. So my final question before we get to my penultimate question. So, what do you say to the argument that all art is subversive? That art as a depiction of reality naturally becomes an accuser, that the tension that produces real art is really against what is ever commonly accepted?
Complete nonsense. I mean, all art is subversive. I mean, it sounds like a 15-year-old. You know, it's so adolescent. How could you sum the history of the greatest manifestations of the human soul to some sort of 15-year-old rebellious statement like that? It's so asinine. I mean, art essentially is the overflow of the interior life of the person. The human person is the greatest, most beautiful thing God created. That's why our bodies are so amazing. They're designed to communicate what it means to be a human being. That's why we should look after it, and we should essentially try and understand who we are. How do we understand who we are? Through studying the greatest man in history, which is Jesus Christ, God and man. Understand who we are through our Lord, and try and live the highest level of being that He calls us to become saints. And that is That's the true rebellion. In the 60s, we had sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But what I'm giving my students and my apprentices are the two biggest guns in the world for the greatest revolution in the world, which knocks the socks off the 60s. And that's faith and culture. Go out there and have a blast. If you equip the next generation with faith and culture, they are going to turn this world around. But they will not believe you unless you do it yourself. All this happens here. We have to be transformed. If we want to transform the world, it has to be transformed right here. As Solzhenitsyn said in his lecture in Harvard in 73, I think it was, the division between good and evil is not between left and right, between the Russians and the Americans. It's through the heart of every person. Unless we transform our own lives, we're wasting our time pointing at the rest of the world. When you point your finger, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. If you want to change the world, you got 3 times as much work to change yourself. Because if you change yourself, you will change your kids, you will change everybody around you. The only power we have is to change ourselves.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. All right, before we get to the last question, I need to announce the winner of our free beer. So, Juliet Meyer, you are the first person to have followed Fredericksburg Theology on Tap tonight. However, I'm told you might not be old enough to consume said beer, so you may give it to whomever that you like.
Sorry, no.
Have your adult that you're giving this to see Jeff or Sean. All right, so our final question we give to every Theology on Tap speaker. It comes from our Holy Cross Academy student Stella, who started this tradition, and we have just kept it going ever since. So, are you ready for this?
I hope so.
What is your favorite dinosaur, and have you ever sculpted it?
Yeah, you know the one with the 3 horns?
A triceratops?
So cool. I heard 3 horns, come on. Yeah.
Have you ever sculpted this triceratops?
I did try once. It turned into an elephant. And, I could only get 1 horn to stay on. Yeah.
I believe Stella is here tonight. So Stella, there you go. There she's raising her hand in the back. Fantastic. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.